All right, so welcome back to another episode of Basically EMS, the EMS podcast for everyone, including basic providers. Today, we're going to jump and talk a little bit about medic school. I've got a couple other paramedics here, so we can talk about our experiences. I'm Chris.
I'm Wade.
MK.
MK, tell us a little bit about yourself, because nobody's met you before.
Well, my name is MK. Currently, I'm a paramedic with Ada County Paramedics. I've been doing the paramedic gig for 3 years. I've been in EMS altogether for 8. 7 of those years with Ada County.
Right on. How about you, Parker?
I'm Parker. I am a brand new baby medic. I just got my national license back in March. Been with Ada County for the past 10 months and been in EMS for about 7 years now.
Right on. Cool. So jumping into it, the first question that I think we should address that as instructors, I'm sure you've gotten this too, is before even going to medic school, AEMT first or straight to medic school? So I know you were in advanced back in the day. Did you ever have your advanced?
No, I did not have my advanced.
Okay, and then I know you went straight to medic school.
Yeah, I made a mistake. For sure.
We'll address that later. So what do you think, MK, as somebody who's kind of walked that path before? What do you think about advanced or straight to medic?
I think having your advanced and being able to work with it a little bit before being forced into the trauma that it can be medic school is very beneficial. Okay. Yeah. For me, it was I was kind of forced into it. Being an EMT at the time was not the most lucrative thing that I chose to do.
Still not.
It's still not. You're right. But thinking that I wanted to go to medic school, I had to get to where I could only have one job. So I worked 2 jobs for a very, very long time. And in order for me to be able to go to medic school and just have one job, because I couldn't have 2 jobs and work and go to paramedic school, I had to get advanced because that was enough of a pay raise for me to be able to let my other job go. So that's basically what pushed me into advanced. Okay. But I was really, really happy that I did, because like I said, I was working for Ada County at the time, and I had a lot of medic partners that would, kind of let me, not experiment, but they let me work with my skills as far as IV starts, fluid administration, pushing the medications that were within my scope as an advanced.
Would you say there was any advantages to the advanced EMT before your medic? Like as far as from a educational perspective?
I'm not really sure. I know most of the base of advanced was the same as basic, right? So it was a lot of regurgitation of that basic. But I think it was really beneficial, not just with the skills, but also the education. I learned a little bit more about medications. I learned a little bit more about their pharmacodynamics, and the importance of fluid administration and what role that plays. And that education-wise, I think that was where it benefited me the most.
I'm curious just mostly because of the kind of twisting of mentality you got to have to be an EMS, right? Like you look at things from a different perspective, and I was just more wondering, I guess, from a shift of mindset. So that advanced kind of changed the way you look at things from an EMT basic to a medic level. Was that kind of a good stepstone there?
It was. My basic assessments got better as I went to advanced. And then once I got to paramedic school, my BLS calls that I ran were far better than they were when I first got hired, because I understood a lot more about what I need to be looking for, right? It's about pattern recognition, which is something I try and tell our basic students. It's about pattern recognition, and I really learned how to look for those patterns as my education progressed. So going from advanced and then to paramedic, I just got better at all of that pattern recognition.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good.
So it sounds like it was a good thing.
It was.
You feel like it was very beneficial.
Yeah, it was for me, for sure.
Yeah, what I typically tell my students is it's always going to be beneficial if you can do it, but if you're looking to go to medic school in a year or two, then maybe just financially it might be a little difficult. You might be better off taking that, however much money and putting it towards medic school, because depending on your medic program, it can be pretty expensive. So I don't know, Wade, if you, kind of what you say, but that's typically my thing if, kind of your timeline.
Pretty similar. I don't discredit, or no, that's not the right word. I don't, discourage people from getting further education. From my perspective, like I said, I made a mistake. I went straight from EMT basic to medic school with no working experience, and that was a learning curve and a half. But my thought process is that you're going to learn the same skills in medic school anyway, and if you know that's going to be your end goal, maybe get good, like MK was saying, at like the BLS stuff. Own your craft, hone it, and then when you're ready to move on, you can move into the scope that encompasses a bit of everything. And I think one thing that doesn't get enough credit when it comes to becoming a medic is the ability, or rather the responsibility you're going to have, the leadership role. And like, now it's on you. It's not like, oh, I'm just helping you get through this. Like, nope, you make the choice, and if it goes south, it's your license potentially.
Yeah, I feel like maybe a little bit of that is medic school dependent too, which we can kind of get into when we talk about medic school and my experience having been out of state and everything. Cool. Any thoughts, Parker?
So I think you guys nailed it on the head. Like, if you have the financial ability, I say go for it. It will definitely help you become a medic. Just learning that, having that advanced knowledge, advanced skills. But I also think that if you aren't financially able to do both, finding a good mentor at the department where you work is equally as beneficial. I didn't have the financial ability to go get my advanced EMT, and I'm sure we'll talk about the cost of medic school here in a bit, but it's a big jump. And so I knew it was going to be my end game. So I attached myself to some really great medics where I worked for prior, and then even here at Ada County, and just really learned a lot from them. Learned, about fluid management, learned about the medications,
You
how
haven't
to
worked
drop.
with me yet.
It's because you're on a different shift.
That's right.
But yeah, so I think if you're unable to go and get your advanced EMT, find a good mentor where you work and learn from them. And I think that'll be just as beneficial.
Yeah, learn how to be. I think there is a chapter at the end of the basic book that talks about being a ALS assist, and pay attention to that. Go through that, pay attention to it, and learn how to be a good assist for your medic. Because then it doesn't matter what your scope of practice is. You can kind of start to think forward and help your medic out by trying to help think in advance. Okay, this is what we've got. I know they're going to need a 12 lead. I know they're going to want to start an IV. I know they're probably going to want a bag of fluid. I'm going to get the med bag out. I'm not exactly sure which med they're going to need, but here's the med bag. Or even just learning how to set up for intubation, right? So we have those cool little mats at the county now, where the dump mats things, throw everything out there, open everything up, put it all out there, and learn how to be that really good ALS assist, and you're going to go a long ways, and you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you're going to be an EMT, you need to be active, and you should never stop learning, especially if you want to go to medic school.
Right.
And we'll talk about kind of what we did to prepare, but that was a big thing for me. Is like I tried to be in that mindset, even if I didn't know what they were doing or why. And then if I had the ability, I'd ask afterwards, like, why did you do this? Where did you come to that decision? And every call, it doesn't matter if you're 911 in our facility, just taking grandma to dialysis. Like, if you want to learn something, you're going to have a list of medications you can learn from the patient's home medications. There's always something to learn on every call. Yeah. And I think that's the people that really progress and do well, is people, we all know the Godfather, right? Randall, he's a guy who's, I'm not young, but he's been doing this longer than I have. He's been in EMS for like 40 years. And after every call, he was actively looking to learn on every single call. After 40 years, he's forgotten more than this table has ever learned, because he's done it so long. And I think that goes really far, and you don't need to be a medic to do that. You can start that as an EMT, and you should start that as an EMT if you want to be good at your job, and if you want to take good care of your patients. You should always be learning on every call.
Agreed.
So kind of bringing it now to medic school. So I just wanted to see where were you guys, and kind of what was your mentality Wade might be a little bit different here. When you got to the point where you're like, okay, now I think I'm ready to jump into a medic program, like what was there any defining things? You had a number of years, a number of calls, you saw X amount of things. Was there anything that made you guys decide like, okay, this is my time, I'm ready to go for it?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Okay. So I started out wanting to become a medic, but I remember thinking in BLS, in my basic class, that I wanted to be really good at the BLS part before I pursued that. Wasn't sure how EMS worked in Idaho. Got on with a couple of fire departments, did a couple of ride-alongs, and I had fantastic experiences. I got to do some cool stuff. So I kind of got sidetracked a little bit because I got bit by the fire bug. So I pursued that for a while. And after, several attempts and interviews, I did eventually get picked up by Albuquerque Fire and Rescue. And being so far away, me being in the age group that I was in, not really wanting to pick up my life and start over again and go through something as arduous as a fire academy all by myself someplace where I knew nobody was not, I decided that that was not what I wanted. And I was like, okay, so what do I want? And it just popped into my head real easy. Well, I got into EMS because I wanted to be a paramedic. And that's what sealed the deal for me, is just kind of trying to pursue something else, and then that magnet just pulling me back around, and things just kind of fell into place. And then I had to sit down and figure out how I was going to work it out to where I could go to paramedic school. But I was darn sure that that's what I wanted to do by the time by the time it came around.
Right on.
Yeah, for me, the complete opposite. I honestly never wanted to become a medic. My dad was a firefighter for the city of Boise, so I grew up around the fire department. I got bit early by the fire bug, and that's always what I wanted to do. But I knew that the first step was getting your EMT basic. So I did that. I was going to school over in Rexburg up at BYU, Idaho, and their fire department, the Rexburg Fire Department, or Madison Fire Department, I should say, they had a part-time position open. So I applied, got hired. I was able to work part-time, go to school, and after working for them for about 4 or 5 years, a couple full-time positions opened up, and the requirement was that you were a medic because they were a fire-based EMS service. So that got me thinking, okay, do I really want to work here? Do I want to be a medic? And then we all have that one call that sticks with us. And I had that one call on December 23rd of 2020. And as a basic EMT, I did everything that I could in my scope of practice, and I still felt like I needed to do more. And so after that call, I decided that I wanted to go to medic school so I could be a better provider and do more for the people that I cared about and for the community that I serve. And so that's really what kind of pushed me more the medic route. And then, as much as I loved Rexburg and loved working for Madison Fire Department, I'm originally from Boise. My family's here, wanted to be a little bit closer to home. So I moved back here and started working in the ER at St. Al's, and then finally got picked up by Ada County Paramedics, and I haven't regretted anything since.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how a lot of us kind of don't start maybe the medic path. Like like everybody else, want to be a firefighter. Kind of funny, I was a movie theater projectionist for a long time, and then that just stopped being a thing anymore. Again, I'm old. And so...
I'm right there with you, buddy.
Yeah, I know. And so, yeah, it was kind of a thing where I started like, I want to go get into the fire department, and, got my EMT. And then once I started working in the field, and I did a fire academy, but it's super competitive. So as I was testing for fire jobs, I was also testing to get to medic school, and I got in, and then I started working as a medic with the mentality of like 3 years. And then because I didn't want to be that medic on the fire. Like I'd been around too many fire medics that they don't care about medicine. They just want to be firefighters. And that in California, your P card is what gets you hired. So I didn't want to be that guy. It's like, I'll do 3 years on an ambulance before I'm willing to go be a fire medic. And then I just ended up loving the medicine side of things. But for me, for medic school, I always wanted at least like 2 years as an EMT before I really started pursuing it. And so I felt like after 2 years I was pretty ready, and then we'll talk about it next, but there were a number of steps I took to help myself prepare for it. But yeah, I know Wade's what we call the 0 to hero. That I think would have been really a struggle. You know, I liked having a couple years. And in California, you can't even apply for medic school. The medic schools won't accept you without at least a year of experience full time. So, you know, that was that hurdle. And then I was really looking for 2 years because I wanted to be a good EMT before I wanted to even pursue the medic side of things.
Yeah, I know. I just I'm gonna wing it, you know, and it worked, but it was rough. Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in biology and human communication, and I was actually pre-physical therapy. And then I actually took the exam, kind of like the entry level to physical therapy school exam. And I had a moment of clarity and panicked during that test and canceled all of my scores, which my dad loved that after paying for that test. So coming back here is like, well, I don't really know, but I also kind of made the choice that I was like, well, I'm going to be a doctor halfway through my senior year. It's like, I'm going to go to med school now. Like, great choice, Wade. And so came back here, went to school, didn't really love a lot of the chemistry aspects. So I kind of fell out of I'd also just finished 4 years of school. I didn't want more. So I talked to a firefighter from Oregon, a buddy of my dad's, and he kind of was like, well, let's get you on the right path. And I was like, well, I'm still kind of toying between like going to med school, becoming a doctor, maybe going fire. And I ended up having a conversation with a doctor down in Texas who was like, well, if you want to go to med school, you got to change one of three things: your experience, your grades, or your location. And my grades were kind of what they were. I was a student athlete, but I'd say I was an athlete student. Not as great grade-wise as I should have. My experience, very minimal. So, and then he told me I need to move to Texas because that's where the most med schools per capita are. So if you want your best bang for your buck or your best chance, that's where you go. So I was like, well, what if I became a paramedic? And he's like, well, I've never heard of medics not becoming a doctor if they want to. So I was like, well, okay. So I went and joined an EMT class, and Chris was my EMT teacher. And I remember the advice of, you should be an EMT for at least a year. And I'm like, yeah, sick, as I'm applying to medic school in that classroom. Got in first time. I think my didactic background helped me quite a bit. But yeah, learning curve and a half. Could I go back and do it again, I probably would make some different choices. It was fine on the didactic side, but the hands-on really started pulling away from me just because I'd never seen it. I saw it in school, and it's seeing it, but it's not seeing it, you know? And that was kind of how I fell into it. And then I just fell in love with the medicine side, and here I am.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I always, you know, like, I mean, to be fair, I wrote a letter of recommendation for you. I thought you were going to do fine. But you know, there's so many little nuances that if you're watching this and you've never actually worked in the field, like just little things like sense, you just get that sixth sense when you start the sick versus not sick. Like I remember specifically, I was an FTO where I worked before in California. And I had a brand new, and we were dual EMT because it's a weird system down there, 911. So we walk in, and it's in Mission Viejo, California, big, beautiful house by the lake, you know, $2 million house. And there's a whole lot of soccer moms and pill overdose down there. So it was kind of one of those situations, right? And we walk into the house, and there's a lady back of the house. She's just like this, like very obviously overdosed. And I recognize that right off the bat. Like, she's gray, she's not breathing. All my senses, my alarms are going off in my head. I immediately turn to grab my bag to grab the BVM, and my brand new second day partner walks up, and he's like, "Hi, ma'am. My name's Wade. What's going on? How are you doing today?" Right? And no offense to it wasn't. He just didn't know. He didn't have those senses yet because he hadn't put in his time. And just like you were saying, when you're an EMT, you have Big Brother there to help you out most of the time, generally, right? So even if you're a brand new EMT, you probably have another EMT with more experience. If you go into the medic side of things, you're it. There's nobody there watching over you generally. So your mistakes are going to have much more profound effects. So, you know, learning those little nuances, and even just the everyday stuff of what is dispatch like? What happens when I get dispatched? You know, how do I move somebody on a gurney? You're not thinking about how you're going to get a 400-pound person down 2 flights of stairs. And if you have that EMT experience, when you're the one making those calls, you have that experience to pull from. So, you know, not even the medical side of things. I think, you know, sometimes we forget just doing the job. There's a lot that you're accountable for as a medic that if you don't have that experience as an EMT, which is one of the reasons I really push people to, you know, at least give it a year if possible. But I understand that people just want to go. And then financial, that's a huge thing, right? Yeah. It's a big financial burden sometimes.
I learned a lot. So I'm the oldest one at this table. and
Debatable.
kind of like
Is it though?
No.
I feel like that's pretty objective.
Sorry, felt like right
who
moment.
said is it though? I'll smack you. I did the same thing the first time around though. I went from high school to 4-year to master's degree, just all the way through, no holds, nothing held me back. 19 years straight of school, and if I could have gone back and done that part differently, and gave myself time to gain some experience and know that, you know what, this might not be what I want to do. But I was like, nope, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go for it all the way. I'm going to force this square peg into this round hole, and it's going to work for me. And you know what? It didn't end up working for me. That being said, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. Probably wouldn't be as happy as I am. But, I mean, there's a lot to be said for allowing yourself some experience. So
Yeah.
that would be my recommendation as well.
Exposure is huge.
Yeah.
Like just,
Yeah.
kind of backtracking with Chris a little bit, like, even when I was new, being on the ambulance and lights and sirens going code to something, I was like looking around and all excited, and then eventually it's just like, yeah, I don't care.
Do
right?
we have to go code again?
Yeah.
Right. But like that already throws you out of your game. If like you're already that fired up and the call has barely started, that's the exposure and experience that starts to play a role.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly just hated school. I mean, I had good grades all throughout high school and college, but I mentally could not do school or college and then go jump right into med school. It would have destroyed me. So that was my big reason why I waited, and I kept waiting and waiting. So I'm like, do I really want to go back to school? Because it's no joke. Medic school is tough. So getting that exposure really helped solidify the reason why I wanted to go to medic school.
Yeah.
Right on. So next thing to kind of ask you guys, what did you do anything to prepare specifically to get into medic school?
Nope.
No. Well, or were there any like requirements for medic school?
So for my school, I went to National Medical Education and Training Center, NMETC. It's a Boston-based program, so I was able to do it here in Boise. It's all online. You fly back to Boston for about 2 weeks and do what they call boot camp, which is similar to our advanced hybrid class here. You fly out, you do all your skills, and then you're done, right? So their requirements, they have an interview. The interview lasts anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. It's over the phone. And they just kind of ask you, are you ready? Like they kind of get a feel for what your life situation is like. In fact, I remember some of the advice that they gave me in my interview. Like they're like, if you're in a relationship, don't get divorced, don't break up, don't start a new relationship, don't start a new job, don't move. Like, don't do any of the stuff. Stay where you are right now, because medic school is tough, and you throw in these variables, and it could make the difference between you passing or not.
Yeah, you need that stability.
Yeah, exactly. I did not listen to that, and I actually moved during medic school. I moved back to Boise, which was difficult. But luckily, it was all, like I said, it was all online. They had live lectures, but they were also recorded lectures. So if I missed a class, I could go back and rewatch it the next day, which really helped with work. But as far as preparation, yeah, it was just this 3-hour-long interview. You submit an application, letters of recommendation, and that's all I can remember doing.
Pushed everything out for medic info.
Yeah.
I don't remember my 5th birthday party anymore. That's gone.
Oh, man, what a loss.
What a
It was
year.
great.
Yeah.
I've asked your mom. She said it was real fun.
Hurtful.
Yeah. How about you, MK? Do you have anything specific that you did to prepare?
No, because, I was working for Ada County, so there were so many of us that attend the program that I attended that I just really did a lot of listening to those people that had gone through the program before me, and asked a lot of questions about how it works with internship and jobs not the jobs, but the schedule that we were working, trying to hopefully when shift bid came around get the right shift that I needed in order to be able to continue to take the classes. What threw a big wrench in it for me, obviously, was COVID. So thank goodness we weren't the varsity class spring semester of that year, because that was really tough for them. But even the fall of 2020 and going all the way through the next year, just with it being COVID and the restrictions that they had, really made things interesting. And for somebody who had been out of school for 20 years, to one, go back to a program like medical school, and then for two, having the dynamic of that COVID threw in there was a trip. I mean, I am not technologically savvy. I wasn't used to having to take classes online. I wasn't used to having to turn in assignments online and do research online and all of these things. So that was difficult. I had some personal things happen that threw another wrench into it, just made it really, really difficult. And the whole drinking from a fire hose that first semester, it was a lot more than I guess it was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. But just that time away from school and coming back in and having to learn how to swim again was tough. So there's nothing you can really do to prepare for it. I mean, you can probably look online and you can watch videos and you can probably find people who will talk about, oh, I was really well prepared. I did this, and this. But I guarantee you that first semester, they weren't prepared for that first semester. It doesn't matter. So
What's that Tyson quote? Like, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
until they get punched in the face,
Right,
yeah.
like,
Yep.
You can have a plan for medic school. Until you're in medic school, you don't know what it feels like.
Yep.
Fair.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess I'm a little bit different than you guys. Pre-medic school, and there were some programs, because again, it's very competitive sometimes for medic schools to get into medic schools. And Southern California has a lot of medic schools, but it can be very competitive, the testing processes and stuff. And so some of them had some requirements beforehand, but really more just for my own benefit. I took, the local community college had a EKG course that I took, and it was cool. They had it like 8 weeks of an EKG course into 8 weeks of ACLS. So I took an EKG course and an ACLS course. I took a PALS course to prepare. I did medical terminology through the local community college, and then there was a school I was going to apply for that required A&P, and I had done some college beforehand, but I hadn't done an A&P class, so I did that as well. So I found that to be super helpful, especially because it started to give me like the medic perspective on some stuff, like cardiac calls. It kind of made me a little frustrated because some of the medics I worked with, like I said, weren't the best. And so there was some times where, like, I specifically remember we went on a call and we walk into a Kaiser Permanente, which you guys maybe don't know what Kaiser is, but it's just like it's a healthcare system. But so we walked into the urgent care, and there's the doctor of the urgent care hands us a strip, and he says, hey, this guy's an SVT, but he's grossly stable, so I don't want to treat it here. He needs to go to the ER, whatever. I don't want to, walk down that path. We'll have you at least get him to the ER before you start treating it, because blood pressure was good, all that stuff. So I'm looking at him like very obviously SVT at like 200, whatever, all good. We get him back in the ambulance, and it's all fire medics down there where I was at. The fire medic's like, hey, let's hook him up to the 12 lead. Hook him up to the 12 lead, and spits it out, and it says AFib. And I'm looking at it, and it's as regular could be, right? It's very obviously SVT. And the medic's like, oh, it says AFib. I guess we won't do adenosine or anything. We'll just drive him into the hospital. And so the dude was just in SVT for like 10 minutes unnecessarily. He was, like I said, he was stable. Walk him into the ER. The doctor walks into the ER. He's like, why don't you guys treat the SVT? And they're like, and he immediately like gives him adenosine. He converts first shot of adenosine. No big deal. But it put me in the mentality being able to look at that kind of call and being like, this is what I'm actually seeing. And so it helped a lot, I think, when I got to medic school, especially cardiology is a huge thing in medic school that people can struggle with. And I know having some basis in that going into it, I felt was really beneficial. So even if there are these classes you can take, ACLS, PALS, PHTLS, AMLS, there's a lot of different classes that are shorter classes that you can take at the advanced level that I think will kind of set you up for success. Like, I
Yes.
mean,
So if I can backtrack a little bit, my degree was in athletic training. So when I went back to medic school, I already had all of that stuff. So even going through my master's degree, I had med term. I had so much A&P that just to say A&P made me want to vomit. Because I got it in like every class. I got it in my orthopedic class. I got it in my exercise physiology class. I got A&P. I had biology. I had biology minor. So I had physiology and anatomy, human and otherwise. I took a zoology class. That was incredible, one of my favorite classes. But I had so much pieces and parts of bodies and how they work in my head that I just, it was more than what I knew to do with. But so yeah, I did have that background. I just didn't have to do that again. Mm-hmm. They just gave me, because I had the degree, they said, okay, you're post-baccalaureate, you got all of this. I wasn't going in for the associate's degree, but I ended up having enough credits to qualify. So instead of just the certificate, I did end up with the associates. So
I'm in the same kind of ballpark. There was, because we went to the same medic school, there was prerequisites like A&P, med term.
Yep.
But because I had already had the the pre-PT degree, the same thing. Like I've already done med term, I've done A&P, I've had cadaver lab time, I've done a little bit of cardiology intro and like that kind of stuff. And yeah, same thing. It was just I already had a baseline information, and I think frankly for me, I think that's the only reason I was successful through medic school was because I had a lot of the didactic from like a structural perspective down that I could start figuring out. Okay, this is what's wrong now.
yeah.
And when I did my advanced class here, at that time, I don't know if you still do this or not, but we had ACLS, PHDLS, and AMLS were also offered for that. I don't think PALS was. I think it was just ACLS.
Yeah, we kind of go back and forth with that. It's something we like to do, but there's a lot of administrative.
So I actually had that
issues
exposure to that too,
Yeah.
which was that was beneficial as well.
Yeah, and you don't need an advanced school. You can just go sign up and do that. So even if you're coming zero to hero, like you did have a background in it.
Yeah.
So, if you don't have the experience, maybe if you do have that medical experience from a different, maybe you've been a CNA or an MA or you've, worked in PT or whatever, I think that would be a huge thing to help you be prepared.
I know my bachelor's in exercise physiology really helped me out.
Yeah. I think a big thing too is if you're going to come from other healthcare backgrounds into something like medical school, be prepared to humble yourself a little bit. Like we know a lot of things going into medical school, and you're going to learn a lot more things out of it, and it's going to kind of shift and change your perspectives. And we've all been around medics who are far from humble, I'll say, and they make poor decisions sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's having that moment of understanding, like, okay, I'm not the greatest thing in the world, right? Like that's going to kind of help guide you through it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the patient assessment side of things is just different between, I'm very familiar with what you have experience with, having an athletic training background and working in the physical therapy realm for a while. Just patient assessment's kind of patient assessment, but there's a huge difference between, I like to look at EMS as the acute side of things. You see everything acutely, and then PT athletic training, a lot of that is chronic. So we're dealing with the more chronic side of whatever happened in the acute setting.
Right.
And so patient assessment changes, right? Because you got to make sure their airway, breathing, and circulation is good if you're on the EMS side. But when somebody walks into your PT clinic, you're not necessarily going, okay, is his airway open?
Right.
All right. What's the skin signs? That's it's a whole other perspective on how to do things.
Changes a lot.
But it does get you used to talking to people and putting your hands on people appropriately, and getting the pattern down so you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't really touch on too, preparing for medic school, that I think is really overlooked, especially in like the modern era of text messaging and social media and all that. Like one of the biggest struggles having FTO'd for a long time is, especially the younger people, is just like you need to come up and just talk to people, and you need to not have any concern, or you need to be able to do that, not have that self-doubt in being able to just come up, especially if you're 22 and you have to come in and tell a 75-year-old, like, you're having a heart attack or those kind, that's hard. And going straight to a paramedic, all that falls on you to tell somebody their kid's not going to make it. Like, having a little bit of that and seeing how that's done can be really helpful. Or just that interpersonal communication thing. A lot of people, and especially, hearing from the guys who've done this a long time, that just the younger generations that haven't really experienced that as much, or online schools and those kind of things. Like, these kids came up in this and they don't have that person-to-person, face-to-face interaction. It's a little bit harder for them. So another thing that you might be missing if you go straight to it, that something just to think about, you have to be really good at talking to people. Like, I tell brand new EMTs all the time, like, we act like what we do is this big thing. Like, we just have a conversation. The conversation is just about their current medical state, right? Like, that's all an assessment is. We have all these acronyms and all these things, but really, if you're just curious, you have a curious mind, and you like, hey, you have chest pain? Well, what does that feel like? Like, just like you went to vacation. Where'd you go to vacation? Cool. What did you do while you were there? Oh, cool. Did your kids have fun? Right? Did you? It's no different. You were just having a conversation about their medical problems, and so if you don't have that experience, something to maybe work on to go get that experience somewhere if you can.
It's interesting.
Customer service helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So before I decided to go to medic school, I was thinking of becoming an athletic trainer and getting my master's here at Boise State. So I contacted the department head, and we set up a Zoom meeting, and we were talking, and I was looking on the prerequisites to get into the program, and I noticed that there was a psychology class. Well, my undergrad, my bachelor's, didn't require me to take a psychology class, so I didn't take it. So I was talking with him about it, and he's like, you know what, with your experience in EMS as an EMT for 5 years, we could probably figure out a way to waive that class, because the main reason why we have people take that class is so that they learn to talk to people and learn to communicate. And so it was really, really cool to know that my experience in EMS would help me jump over that hurdle, because you're exactly right. It's just talking to people, just have a normal conversation.
So you're saying that we as EMS providers are psychologists?
I'm not saying that at
So
all.
far from it.
Crazy though. Similar but different.
Yeah. Look for, that's definitely a podcast we have an idea for in the pipeline, and talking that specifically because it's super overlooked in EMS. We really struggle with that because we're not trained to that level, really.
Yeah, and just talking to people, having a conversation, also learning how to put your hands on patients, right?
Yeah, that's huge too.
I make a joke about it being appropriate, but it makes the students laugh. So, but honestly, it's having the confidence to put your hands on somebody in an appropriate manner and making them feel like even if you don't, that you know what you're doing, that you know what you're looking for. You can't, put 2-3 fingers on somebody and push on their belly and say, does this hurt? No, it tickles. Why are you touching me like that? Having that heel of your hand to your fingertips rolling across the abdomen, being confident in that. And maybe you don't know what you're feeling for, but I guarantee you, if you felt something weird, you would go, oh, that's weird. And then they're like, hey, this person's done this before. They're not, poking at me with one finger. So it's just, it's confidence.
Yeah, we got to get real confident. Like, you have to be a dude and be okay with doing a 12 lead and, like, maybe moving a woman's breast so that you can place those stickers on. And it just gets to where you don't even think about it. But at first, it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to
a lot more nudity than I thought there was going to be, for sure.
As I always say, it's never the people we want to see naked. But
Yeah.
we see a lot of
No,
naked people.
you're right. Never.
It's always, unfortunately, that is the case.
If I never saw a naked body again, I'd be okay.
Yeah, agreed. So how about for you guys getting into medic school itself? You guys went to the same medic school. So what was it like for you guys? What's the process of getting into that program?
Application and interview.
Yep, application, and then there is an interview, and it's a panel interview with the head of the program, the head of the emergency management program, and then 1 or 2 people from ISU office, admissions office. And they basically just try to see, they ask you questions to see if you would be fit to be a paramedic. And the one that stood out to me the most was, paramedicine is sometimes you work on a holiday and you don't see your family for an entire day, and sometimes it's 24 hours, sometimes it's, and I had I've been a produce manager for 13 years, and being in retail grocery, it's a weekend, night, and holiday business. So I was like, I have no problem with that. I've been doing that for my entire career, so it doesn't really matter to me. But those are the kinds of things that they want to flesh out to see if you're actually fit to be in the class.
Yeah,
So.
similar, I would imagine similar experience for you then, right?
Yeah, I don't remember any of the questions. I remember there being, because this was like pre-2020, so like Zoom was not really a thing, but there's one videoed person in, and I believe he was Idaho Falls Fire, because we were doing through Idaho Falls, so do remote learning. But I remember, I mean, just if you had your prereqs and you made an application, we had to have a letter of recommendation and then the interview. And I remember with my interview is I banked a lot on my, because I remember questions, I guess, more so about like, how do you do with adversity and like those kind of things. And that, you know, my athletic career defines adversity a little bit. So I was same thing, very comfortable answering questions and like, yeah, I don't have problems with this. Like, I understand. But similar process and was really smooth, honestly. I didn't really have a lot of back end problems.
Yeah. And then you kind of covered yours already a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, just again with that interview, sounds very similar to ISU's program. You know, letters of recommendation, interview process, some prerequisites. I don't remember a whole lot of my interview questions either, but I do remember them, like I mentioned earlier, making sure that we had the stability, that we had a good support system as well. I do remember them asking me about my friends and family and if there was anybody that would be able to support me as I went through. So they really wanted to make sure that we as students were in the best place to learn and then to ultimately pass and become a good medic. But yeah, I remember sitting in my truck for 3 hours on a phone call because that's what we did for our interview.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I didn't interview. I think I interviewed for a different program that I got waitlisted on. So that was common down there too, that you would do the application interview. And I want to say there were some that had a written test as well where I was at, that you'd have to do like a basic EMT test to prove, just to show. I want to say that was a thing for my program. And I know I didn't for the program I got into have an interview, but I did a fire academy there like 2 years before. So I wonder, I want to say they normally would have interviews, and it might have just been waived because I had already been through the fire program, so they all knew me already. But that's a pretty common thing for people to expect, that you're going to have an application process, interview process, maybe some testing to get into. So if you're looking to get into a paramedic program, it's usually not just like, you have to be the first one when it opens up, and they're going to fill it. Like, you have to go through the process to get in. So
kind of an obvious one too, but just prerequisite wise, having a national EMT basic, that's pretty important to this whole equation.
yes.
What?
Yeah, who would have thought?
And your BLS card.
Yeah.
Yeah, the standard stuff you're going to have to work. You'll obviously have to have that as well. And then, like I said, my program required I had to go to my to HR and get a letter stating that I had been an employee that had worked full time for more than a year. I think they actually had a number of hours requirement of 48 times 52, whatever that would be, that I had to have a letter on the company letterhead to turn in with my application packet.
Doesn't that average 56 hours a week, according to some math that's done?
No, it was 48 hours a week. Yeah. Requirements for your programs. Did they have any requirements for ISU?
Med term AMP were the big ones, and basic.
Okay. How about for your program?
Just that you had your basic and you had if you didn't have an AMP course, you'd have to take that. But
Yeah, mine didn't have, the one that I got into, I don't think had any requirements. There were some that had AMP, midterm. One of them had ACLS and PALS. So another thing, if you're watching this or listening to this and you're considering paramedic school, look into the program, see what program requirements are, because it might take you a little time to get those done. You might need college level anatomy, physiology. If you don't have those, you're going to have to spend a couple months, at least one college semester, to get that. So, if that's your eventual goal, make sure you know what the requirements are locally so you can get on that.
As far as requirements go too, like you're saying ACLS PALS, like make sure you're double checking because ours was included. Like I didn't have to do ACLS and PALS, but it was included with my medic school cost. So, I mean, if you want to do it twice, I guess, but I'm making my own life easier. That's my business. So I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Also, make sure you're asking lots of questions about whether it's a full-time program, part-time program. I know that when I looked at the tuition breakout sheet at ISU, it gives, resident, non-resident cost, and then it also gives part-time, like 10 to whatever credits, and then it gives less than part-time or something. And I asked about that. I remember asking the head of the program, hey, can we do this part-time? He's like, no. I'm like, well, it's listed on the tuition breakout sheet. And I don't know if that's for those people that want to get like the bachelor's and have other classes to take as far as that goes. But he said for the paramedic program itself, it is full-time. There's you're in school full-time. So make sure you understand what your time requirements are going to be.
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking off of that, and if you guys don't want to discuss it, it's your decision, but cost of the program. Are you guys willing to kind of talk about that?
Yeah. It was about $17,000.
It was free. No, I'm just kidding.
Must be nice.
I'm just kidding.
You'll hear about me and you'll be real mad actually here in a minute.
I want to say that I don't remember an exact number, but everything all together just for school part with fees, books, all of that was probably right at 14, and then there were some other things that were added on, which was probably where the 17 came from for him. So we're about in the same boat.
Yeah, that's what I've heard everybody that's gone through the program.
Yep.
I lucked out that I went through a California program, and I was an EMT, so I didn't make very much money. And so California has the Board of Governors waiver if you make under a certain amount that covers all your credits.
Nice.
So the medic program, I think, ended up being like 35 or 40 credits, but all that was covered through financial aid, which is really helpful. So I had to cover book costs and such, which was still a couple grand, but I think I got a FAFSA grant for that. So out of pocket was very minimal for me, but that's just because I was able to take advantage of financial aid and all of that, and California is really good about that. So, but I mean, if it's 30 credits at however many hundreds of dollars a credit is now, it probably would have been fairly equivalent if I had to pay out of pocket. I just was young enough and didn't make enough money that
I think it's like $407 a credit.
Yeah, I know where I was cheaper than it is here by a fair amount, but it still would have been probably $10,000+ all said and done at the end of the program.
I know you can get grants and stuff because with my athletics through my undergrad, I couldn't qualify for any grants. Versus my wife, who I met in medic school, she qualified for a lot of grants because she only did a semester of college after high school. So you can make it work for yourself. It just depends on kind of personally where you're at, with your your educational choices.
Yeah, I had to pay cash because I already had an advanced degree, so I didn't qualify for anything. Scholarships wise, grants wise, it was really, really difficult for me, especially the grants part of things. They're like, you already have an advanced degree, so you don't qualify for grants. But even scholarships, I know that just because of that, they were going to go for somebody who hadn't had the opportunity to go to school yet, which is fine.
Too smart for money.
Yeah, my program, about 15,000 initially, and then like I mentioned earlier, we have to fly back to Boston for 2 weeks. So you get a hotel room, food, flights, all that stuff. It adds about another 2,000, so we're probably at about 17,000 as well. I paid all out of pocket. I did a couple wildland deployments the summer before. Was able to save up. They were able to do. I know my school is able to do like a payment plan. So if you don't have it all up front, you can work on a payment plan. I didn't qualify for any financial aid either, unfortunately. It would have helped a lot.
Yeah, I was in the Goldilocks zone of being old enough that my parents didn't really count for anything, but still young enough and EMT making. I was an FTO and I made I think $10 an hour in Southern California. So which is really also another reason like I need to go get my medic because it definitely pays a good amount more. So right in that zone where I couldn't, my parents couldn't really claim me, which helped me get some good financial aid there.
Did they ever really claim you?
There's too many of us. Yeah, they don't really care. There's just too many of us running around.
Fair enough.
I'm one of 9 kids, so you guys might know that. You don't know that. There's a lot of us around. So program length will probably be about the same. Usually like a year to year and a half. I'd imagine you guys are about the same. That's pretty There are shorter medic programs. There's some like 6 to 9 months. I don't know how like people do all that in that short amount of time, but they are out there. And then the structure, I'd imagine we were all pretty similar. So didactic. I know for me, the didactic, I think, was essentially 2 college semesters. Were you guys the same? ISU?
Yeah, fall, spring, didactic.
We went similar.
We went straight through. I remember we started January, and our boot camp was in November. So it was twice a week, Tuesday nights and Thursday nights for the lecture. And then every week we had no breaks, no holiday breaks or anything, all the way up to about Thanksgiving. And then we'd fly back and finished all that didactic stuff.
So about 6 to 8 months probably then for didactic, pretty much at
Yeah.
most places. And then you were 2 nights a week. I know mine was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from like 8 to 5 each day. I think ISU is probably pretty similar.
Tuesday. Well, when I went, it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 to 3, I think. And then, yeah, because you were after COVID, so they had to swap things around.
Yeah.
Yeah, they broke up labs because there could only be so many people in the lab. So they went from having 1 lab a week to having 4.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, about the same there. And then clinicals, that's going to be more or less defined by the National Registry. So clinical is probably still the same now that it's 240 hours required in hospital. And I think there are a certain number of requirements for ER clinicals. I think I did 20 ER clinicals altogether. I know. It was like 14. I think I did 10 and then 10 ER, then 4. There's a pediatric ER we were able to go to. So probably similar to you guys, and you'll do your respiratory therapy, surgery, OB rotations. You guys do anything beyond that with your clinicals?
We did RT, OB, ICU, ER.
ICU.
We did ambulance clinicals. I said OR, right? Operating room. OB, I said again. There was one other that was weird that I remember. Oh, a tele. We did a tele rotation, so we had to go and watch that. That was awesome. Started at 2 a.m. It's great.
watching people's heartbeats at 2 a.m, trying to stay awake and be, engaged was tough.
Yeah, and I imagine this is all going to be pretty consistent across the board, just because generally to be a paramedic program, you need to be COAMS certified. So these are going to be kind of COAMS requirements. And then internship is kind of where, you make or break yourself, I feel like.
Rubber meets the road, yep.
Yeah, that's 480 hours. So typically like 24-hour shifts or 48 12-hour shifts. You guys working at Ada County, you were hired on at that point. No, you weren't. So
I just missed that cutoff.
That's a
I
bummer.
got some salt about that too, let me tell you.
It's a nice experience for some departments like Ada County. If you're hired on, they will essentially pay for your shifts to be on your internship. So even though I got my medic school paid for, I had to drive 90 minutes each way 48 times for 12-hour shifts for 4 months. So, that's another expectation. If you're listening to this, think about medic school as something you need to factor in. You're going to have to do your internship hours, and it's going to be a lot of hours. It's going to be 3 to 4 months of full-time work essentially to get those hours in without getting paid typically.
Yeah, that was not fun. I definitely remember trying to fit work days into internship, and because I like food and eating regularly, and so that was my problem. I think I need to figure that out.
Yeah, it's definitely maybe some pre-planning or some saving beforehand, so you're a little bit more prepared for, or you're just gonna be working 2 full-time jobs, and one of those, it really is a burden on you mentally, physically, to go do the medic internship stuff. So we'll talk about our experience here coming up.
Just
with the
remember
medic
that's
program.
temporary though.
Yeah.
Like we all got those moments where it's like, this sucks, but if you're working towards a goal, it's temporary. Just temporary looks different for everybody.
Yeah,
you'll
I
get through
remember
it.
thinking I was never going to be done because I was never home. I'd go from shift to clinical.
Just drowning.
I bought a big cooler just so I could pack a day and a half worth of food in it, just so I could. Yeah, it was rough, but I was so glad when it was over.
Yeah, for sure. Right, cool. So let's jump into just medic school experience in general. I feel like anybody listening to this has probably heard kind of the general medic school experience. It's hard. and it is hard. It's like you're saying, drinking from a fire hose. So I think we all had that similar thing. One thing that I found was really interesting, that I didn't have that perspective, obviously, having gone through my medic school until coming up here and seeing people from the ISU program, is I feel like the didactic portion, or the book learning, and the skills learning are two very different things, and some programs are really strong in one or the other. And so I know from my experience going through medic school, we pretty much taught ourselves all the book learning stuff. It was not, I mean, I thought it was fine. I thought I didn't have the perspective. I was like, this is what medic school is, right? Like, I was watching a whole lot of YouTube videos and listening to or reading studies and all this to find the information, because I don't feel like it was really very well presented. But our skills day was phenomenal. Every single day was so good. They worked really hard. There were a lot of really good people that taught us. And especially having FTO'd, I felt like ISU students, when they would come out, like they would crush me on cardiology knowledge and all that. But I just don't feel like it was a very strong program on the didactic side, and I don't feel like it was to the level of my program on the skills side. So just something, maybe do your research, going through programs, that there are strengths and weaknesses in different programs. So I know for me, like I said, there was a lot of me learning this stuff kind of on my own, or really having to pursue that knowledge on my own. But like coming in for the skill, like we could run a call. Like we came out being able to run a call. Maybe we couldn't talk about Scarbosa criteria and all the stuff, like the high level stuff.
I still can't.
Yeah, well, but just in general, that kind of, that's the knowledge it's given. We didn't have that, but we could run a call really well. So
I remember, because you were my first FTO too, is like one of the first things you said is like, you're probably a smarter medic than I am, but I know how to be a medic. And that was a shift in perspective also, but it also kind of gave me some relief, because it's like, well, I know the things I need to know. Now I just need to know how to use them, and that's the harder thing to figure out more often than not.
Yeah, it's fun watching all the new ones come in and see that for myself.
I remember I worked with you and Dave Strawn as like one of my first 2-3 shifts, and I was terrified the whole time.
You were?
Yeah. I had fear very well behind the tears.
Right. But I was a EMT.
Yeah, you were an EMT at that time, but still, I was
You're
still
still
scared.
scary.
Doesn't mean the scare goes away.
It's my RBF, huh?
Oh, it was Strawn. It was him. Dave's got
It's
that.
now
It's-
we got now we all got the
intense.
RMF. It's a resting medic face.
That's right. That's right.
Resting MK face, either one.
Resting MK face. Yeah.
Who else told me that the other day? Somebody else told me that. I can't remember who it was, but they were like, I was so intimidated when I first met you. I'm like, me?
No, it wasn't you. It was the process. That
Oh, it was the
scared me.
Okay, good. I'm glad it wasn't.
You
me.
were just a secondary fear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I don't know if have you had any students, like intern, like
Not. I mean,
anybody's
yes.
preceptor? Yeah.
Yes.
So-
I haven't been a preceptor. I've been. My partner was a preceptor.
Okay, right on.
So
Like, even-
and then I had a ride along the other day.
Cool.
So
Yeah, if you precept for ISU's program, there's like a class and stuff you have to go through with Rod, who runs the program, and that's one thing he talks about, that like we have the book knowledge, and then that actually you have done the job, and like you're up here, but your book knowledge is significantly lower than the brand new medics coming out, and like we get good when we find that middle ground. We have what we need, and we know how to apply it. So like you were saying, going out there can be really humbling, and that can be a struggle for people that go through medic school. I know some classmates, like they've just felt like gods walking out because they have all this knowledge, and then they actually have to put it into play, and they really suffered, and it was really difficult for them. So something to keep in mind.
I think one of the things, as far as like that had made me successful in medic school, was finding a group of people. Find people that are in the same suck as you. And trauma bonding is very real, but like if you can work through the suck in solidarity, and have people that understand what you're living through, and this, because no one's going to get it like they get it, that helped me tremendously. And then just different perspectives, studying with groups of people. Someone might understand one topic way better than I did, and then we can kind of explain back and forth, and then that also proves knowledge. If you can teach it, it.
Yeah.
So
That's what was difficult for my program, because it was all online, so we didn't have a face-to-face until our 2 weeks in Boston. So having that group to bounce ideas off of and go over things, we had to do all that through social media. We had a Facebook page. And we'd go and we'd ask questions there and meet online, but actually meeting in person and discussing things as a group, we didn't have that opportunity. And I think that's what my biggest struggle with my program was, that I'm a very visual learner. I like to bounce ideas off of people, and not being able to do that except for online was very difficult.
I think that hosts a different responsibility in your head, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
it creates ownership,
For
which
sure.
is valid.
I
too.
definitely had to do what Chris did and look up YouTube videos or articles on different types of things. But it would have definitely made it easier if he had a group of 3 or 4 people that he could chat with, trauma bond with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge thing for me because, like I was saying, I would commute like 90 ways, and so, or 90 minutes each way. And so I had a couple people that we commuted from the same area, and in Southern California, that's what you do. Everyone drives everywhere because, that is just what it is. So we kind of set up a carpool, and we were very competitive. And so we essentially would have what we learned the day before, and we'd all go home and read and study, and then we would just try to make each other feel real stupid with how much smarter we were. And like, I learned so much more in that time, probably than school, just because we would just try to roast each other with our knowledge. And so you had to be on your game, and that's a huge thing that we learned. Or we'd find little things like, like lidocaine dosaging and how you would figure that out to come up with that. Like, one of us would come up with our little trick and we'd be like, hey dude, I figured this out yesterday. Here's how I'm going to start doing lidocaine dosaging. And like, we would talk about it and we're like, oh, that's really good. Or, like little memorization techniques and stuff we would share amongst each other. So I felt that to be a huge thing that helped me get through medic school, of having, which, like you said, it's probably a lot harder for you because you didn't have that, but having that interaction daily, find some people that you're going through it with that you can, like, let's talk about this, let's lean on each other a little bit, which just lends itself to what we do. Like, without our partner, we really struggle, right? So, having that in school is really helpful as well.
Team sport.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I still remember some of the things that, like, one in particular with IGE with my wife, just looks like a trident, and it stuck in my head. And to this day, I was like, trident, and I look at her like an idiot. But yeah, burned it into my mind working as a group, just like you said.
Yeah.
And we're competitive too. Calling people names when you're smarter than them makes you feel so big. And then they make you feel dumb, and then it's right back to square one. But
yeah, they beat you in everything, but that one time you can hold something like, yes, I gotcha.
Yep.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Well, I was different because I'm a loner when it comes to the suck, and plus I had a family, so it was a lot different. I would just wanted to be at home as much as I possibly could.
That's fair.
So that's what worked for me, but that definitely doesn't work for
yeah.
everybody. What does work for me that I like to stress is find people outside of EMS that you can relate to. But we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, and a general thing for that is, so don't make this your life.
Right.
100%. That's a huge thing.
And I think
say,
I think that really helped me
yeah,
cope a lot. I had some things going on with my mom and dad, and it helped me to not, because I was in school and then my job was the same as school. I just couldn't be with people in school and at work and deal with the things I had going on outside of work. And I flourished more because I had other things.
yeah, that
pull
can
myself away.
cause some major burnout real quick if you're like, just in general, I tell my students, like, you should not be on the Facebook this and the Instagrams of this, of all the EMS memes. Will, like, have some separation, have a life outside of it, or else you're just going to burn yourself out really fast, as everybody's listening to a podcast that we're talking to.
That's right.
Keep listening to this, though. Basically
yeah.
EMS.
Yeah, this one is a different one. This is real cool. You should be listening to this.
That was another a lot of my early EMS interactions actually is lessons that you taught me, Chris. And like one of them too that I had is like, if me and you are off work and we go to a bar and have a beer, guess what? We're not talking about work. And that kind of resonated with me also, because also, like, to kind of explained it, my wife and I met in medic school, so that was like the basis of our relationship for so long. And then now it's like, okay, well, not now, but at some point we had to decide, like, do I like you outside of school, or is this like, just that trauma bond that we made it through this together, and obviously found other things I like her about, I guess. But like, I guess hopefully she hears this. But yeah, like having that separation is key. Like this is a field too where if you can't get things off your mind, it's probably a problem.
Yeah.
I lived with somebody for years that we worked the same job, the same store, and we were never out of work, even on vacation. It was so difficult. And we would make these pacts that we weren't going to talk, the whole weekend about work, but something always came up and always came back around, and it was a nightmare. It was brutal. It was terrible.
Yeah, not a fun way to live.
I will say, though, the advantage I had with a spouse in the field was that if I had something going on, she understands exactly what I'm talking about, versus, trying to explain like to my accounting spouse, like, well, I touched a dead body today. And they're like, I crunched some numbers. You want to talk about it? Like it's just different perspectives.
Yeah.
There's ups and downs to all of it. There really is.
But it's also difficult because, you meet people outside of work, and when they learn what you do, because this is a pretty awesome job. But you always get asked this question, what's the worst thing you've seen? And you never tell them what the worst thing you've seen because they can't handle it.
Oh, no. Grandma fell.
Yeah, exactly.
I give them choices, funny or gory.
But so in that aspect, it's difficult to make sure that you're having a life outside of work. And so you just got to set those boundaries with people. Like, you know what, I just came off a 24-hour shift. I'd really like to just relax from work and not talk about it.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're understanding, and you can go back, you can circle back to that question another time.
Right.
I use some of my situations. I don't talk about work when I'm not at work, when I'm at home, but there have been times when I've gone home and I've used it as a point of learning for passing on to the kids. I went on this call today. Moral of the story is...
Wear your seatbelts.
Yes.
Yeah.
The moral of the story is
Yeah.
don't be stupid.
Poor kids that have EMS parents.
I do remember growing up, like I said, my dad was a firefighter for the city of Boise, and so he would show us car accidents. Obviously, there's no body or anything in there, but just the wreckage of the car. He's like, this is from a drunk driver. This is from this. This is from this. And like, just scared us straight, essentially.
So circling back a little bit off track, we'll get back to more medical. It's all good discussions, though. So how about experience during clinicals and internship? What was that like for you guys? Anything that you would want to pass on to anybody?
For me, because I was so raw, right? Like everything was scary a little bit, and it was like stepping out of comfort zones and then trusting the work and the effort that you've put in to understand these concepts. Rely on that, now not to a fault where you're going to argue when you're wrong, but I think that being open-minded really changed a lot of my perspectives there. And then the more open-minded, the more willing you are to help, the more you're going to learn there, and the more they're probably going to let you do, which is, for me, in my experience, was great, especially with being so raw. Like I said, I was so green to everything. I hadn't seen it. So that was my big thing with clinicals, just open-minded and be willing to be scared and out of your comfort zone, because it's going to make you better.
Yeah, if you tell them, no, I'm not going to help you with that catheter, they're going to say, no, you can't intubate this patient.
Right.
Yeah, if you're willing to be part of the team, they're going to make you part of the team. But that's on you to make that decision, and let your actions show that you're part of the team during, especially clinicals, because they see so many students, and we're low on that food chain of student. Doctors, nurses, we're pretty low. So if we go and we really are there asking questions and being that person that's always there to help, that they're going to grab us.
That's key. Being engaged in your clinicals. There's some boring clinicals.
Oh yeah, totally.
And if you don't show engagement in those, number one, it makes your time there miserable, and number two, it makes whoever you're shadowing, it makes them miserable too. We got this guide from our program that talked about each clinical and what we were expected, the kinds of things the kind of skills we could do, the kind of things that we wanted to come out of their understanding. And I would take that with me and I would show it to the main person that I was shadowing. And I would say, hey, these are some of the things that I can do. And these are some of the things that I want to learn while I'm here. And not only did it help me, but it helped them.
Oh yeah.
Because they do see so many students, but they just come and they sit, and they're like, well, what are you here for? I'm like, well, this is a clinical for me, so I guess I'm just sitting here and watching you give this person a nebulizer, neb treatment. But showing interest in what they do and asking lots of questions, even when I knew the answer already. So I know that this is what this for, but why do we do this at this time? Why are you doing this now? How can we go back? ICU was great for me. I learned so much in ICU. But I had the motivation to ask the questions and to be engaged. And I got to do a lot of things that they weren't willing to let other students do because I had developed a rapport with them and a trust with them that I was there to learn. And I had a couple of nurses say, "You can push my meds. I don't ever let I don't ever let students push my meds, but I'm going to let you push my meds. So draw it up for me, show me your dose, and I'll go ahead and let you push it." And so that was a win for me, you know. And again, it made my time there a lot less miserable.
I embraced the ICU similarly, and then they're like, "Yeah, we'll let you do something we don't let other students do." And then I did a urinary catheter, and I didn't love that experience to the same degree. But yeah, I get the message for sure.
Yeah, being proactive and asking questions, and not only asking questions from your mentor who you're shadowing, but also other nurses, other medics that you interact with, because there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? Find a way that works for you. If your mentor's a very knowledgeable mentor, but it's just not clicking with you, ask another person. Be like, "Hey, he's doing it this way. I don't understand it. How do you do it?" You know, and just get as much knowledge as you can.
And it's really tough because as paramedic students, we're kind of last down the list as far as who gets clinical time, right?
Yeah.
So ours are always at night, and it's so boring at night. There's not much that goes on. So I would say, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to take a lap. What am I going to find this way?" And I would either ask that question straight out, or I would just take a lap. I would say, "You know what? I'm going to be right back. I just need to take a lap." Number one, it'll wake me up. Number two, I want to see if there's something interesting going on the other side. And when I was doing my my telemetry, that boring 8 hours of telemetry, I had a nurse pull me over into where they had people on Holter monitors, and I got to see how they, bridge these people from the time they have their cardiac injury to the time they have their pacemaker. And that was all very interesting to me. So I didn't have to just sit there and interpret rhythm strips the whole time. I got to wander around and see some pretty sick people being kept alive by some pretty amazing technology and why they do it and how it's done. Yeah. So
I will say this: it was hard for me to do my clinicals because I did my clinicals where I worked at St. Al's. And so when I was there for my clinical time, everyone thought I was there to work.
Yeah.
And so they'd send me to do all these tasks that weren't specific to my clinical time. And so my recommendation is go somewhere where you don't work, but you can see a lot.
Yeah, we had that trouble at Ada County when there was staffing issues. You know, we used our internship time was our regular scheduled shifts, and we were supposed to be interns, but sometimes there was a staffing problem, and so they would pull us from our internship to actually work the shift as a staff member. So that got a little bit tough on occasion. Didn't happen too often, but
I got lost on my taking laps around St. Al's, so I would recommend if you're going to take a lap, know your route.
Know if you need a key card to get through a door.
Yeah, I've also been stuck indoors, but that's another story.
How about your guys' internship? Because coming from California, it's a whole different mentality. So you guys both did the Ada County internship. Anything you guys want to kind of share about that?
I thought it was amazing. Really green, really scared all the time, right? Covered that a couple times now. But
didn't you get in an accident?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
It wasn't my fault, though. I wasn't driving.
No.
Thanks, Cody Warner.
Oh, yeah.
Throw his name out on purpose. But it was great, and the guy that was my internship preceptor became a very good friend of mine. I actually officiated his wedding a couple of weeks ago. It's a good time to make good relationships, and especially think about your internship as like, this is a prolonged interview. Do you want to work here or not? And if you do, make good impressions. And that, I think, is ultimately what helped me out, as well as being successful throughout my schooling. But that helped a lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah, not getting trapped in everybody here knows me. So therefore, I can just be how I want to be. Know you're there. Like Wade said, this is an extended interview. And so all of your relations that you have during your internship with everybody you work with and the docs at the hospital and everything, it's not cake just because we work there. We still have to prove ourselves. We still have to show that we want to be there and that we're smart and we know what we're doing.
Yeah. So internship for me, it was really good. I had a really good preceptor who had a lot of students. And I did well in school. I was like top 2 generally for grades and everything, that I think maybe helped me to get a more chill preceptor, because they pick preceptors based on personalities and where they want you to go, right? And so I think that helped a little bit, that I was just essentially a paramedic for 4 months, like very little, like, I mean, there was oversight. He was making sure I wasn't screwing anything up. But if I was like, I want to push fentanyl, he was like, cool, let's push some fentanyl. And I kind of got to do whatever I want. But I know there are a lot of people that did not have that experience going through my program. I think a lot more so with people that were fire-based, that would work on an engine. Like, they treated you like a probationary firefighter, which I think was really a struggle for some people. I mean, there were people that had to write an essay every week that went through my program. They would have to do 2-hour training classes every week for the guys on the, they did it like a fire internship program, or a fire probie, which I know was definitely hard. So, if you're looking at medic school, that might be your situation. So keep that in mind. Even still, like, if you didn't show up on the first day for my program with donuts and coffee for the crew, you were going to have a bad time for those next 4 months. Like, that was the expectation. And the last day you bought them lunch or dinner, whatever, depending on your hours. Like, that is how you showed your appreciation. So I to this day, I still think that's a good thing. I still recommend that for people if they go in, and it's not like they get paid more to be a preceptor, right? They're putting extra work on themselves to help the next generation. So show a little bit of your appreciation if you can.
And they're writing all your charts.
At Ada County, I did all of my charts.
Did you?
Yeah, when I was, I didn't work there. I
Nerd.
think he was just, no, I didn't want to. He did, when we were driving, he did everything but the narrative, and we get to the hospital. Where I was at in Southern California, we would have hospital wait times. The longest I did during internship was 8 hours holding the wall, waiting for a bed. But we'd usually have an hour plus. And so we'd get there and he'd be like, write your narrative. And so he'd like look it over afterwards. But I still had to write charts. It's the worst part.
It's always the worst part.
I know. But yeah, it could be a pretty chill experience, and it could be really good, or it can be really hard. So just keep that in mind going into it.
So I did my internship out at Canyon County. I originally wanted to do it with Ada County, but ISU's kind of got the monopoly with Ada County. So I did it out at Canyon County. My preceptor was phenomenal, great guy, really busy just because Canyon County doesn't have as many ambulances as Ada County does. So we saw some good stuff. And for my school, we had to write a separate chart. Mm-hmm. So when I told him that, he's like, okay, don't worry about it. You don't have to write. I'll write my chart and you just write your chart. But he would have to look over it and approve it as well. But the hard part for me about doing my internship out at Canyon County is that their stations are only built for 2 people. They didn't have a radio for me. I slept on the recliner almost every night, and they were just like, well, if we get a call at night, we'll wake you up. So that was the only drawback, but honestly, I got some great experience out at Canyon County, some great medics, and had a real fun time out there.
Yeah, I just wish I had stations. I did mine with AMR, so I sat in the back of a van-style ambulance for, 480 hours just in the back, all
Gross.
crunched up. Wasn't super
That's
fun.
the worst part about internship, is being in the back the whole time.
Yeah,
Not
me
really.
neither.
I kind of liked being the box troll. Kind of liked it. Didn't have to drive, no responsibility, just looking at no windows.
Depended on who was driving.
That's fair.
That's true. That's a good
'Cause
point.
I had one driver that I think it was his goal to make me as sick as possible.
It probably was.
Yeah. Well.
Your reputation preceded you a bit. Having been on the other side, having been a preceptor a couple times, my recommendation for anybody that's going to be going through is mainly just come in humble. Like I apparently told Wade, right? Like, you're going to be a smarter book medic than I am. That's just the truth of things after 5 years of being a medic. Like, I haven't looked at those books in a long time, but I'm going to run circles around you actually doing this job. And if you come in with that, without being humble will probably humble you. And I very specifically did that for one of my interns, who's great dude. You know, we all know him, and I love the guy. But there was definitely a lot of like, you know, bravado coming out that I had to. We had I don't even remember what it was. It was some silly rhythm that he recognized, that he was really proud of himself, that he recognized this rhythm. And I was like, cool. How does that change your treatment plan? He's like, it doesn't. Cool. So what do we care? And I like that really, he's talked to me about it like years later, that it was like a real moment for me. He was like, wait a second, like step back, I need to be able to do this job. So
I wish you would have told him that earlier when we were in school together. Just saying.
so yeah, that was the big thing, having been like, you know, having been a preceptor, like come in humble and come in ready to learn every shift. Because you are going to learn a lot. Maybe it's not the book stuff, but you're going to learn how to do it every day. So if you know you're listening to this and you're going to be going through an internship soon, like be a sponge, come in, be curious, be respectful of everybody, whether that be the fire department, whoever, because they can make you have a good time or a bad time too. So be respectful, be curious, and listen to what you say or what your preceptor says. I don't like the mentality. There was a big mentality where I was from that like you become your preceptor for 4 months. That I don't like that. You know, you do the things that they do and you eat when they eat and all of that. And I'm not a big fan of that. You know, stand up for yourself a little bit and have your own way you do things. But there's going to be a time where you're going to want to do a thing and your preceptor is going to say no. And even though you know you're right, at the end of the day, it's up to them. So just keep
sometimes learning what to do is learning what not to do.
Yeah,
and that's a huge takeaway.
Yeah, that's another thing that can be humbling. Going through paramedic school, if you have all these tools and you want to use them and learning, and like maybe we don't use them every time, that could be a big thing too.
Yeah.
So with all of this said, if you guys could go kind of talk back to your younger selves, is there anything you would have done differently on your journey to where you're at now in EMS, going through medic school and all of that?
Spend more time studying, get experience as an EMT before going to medic school. That would be the big one. I don't know. I think I truthfully really enjoyed my experience and I made it what I wanted it to be. I think it would have just been, you know, more focus going into it and understanding where this could actually take me instead of like, well, this is the next step on my ladder of wherever, you know, like putting in the time and effort and study habits are, if you haven't developed them now, if you're going to medic school, start figuring them out before you get there, because the last thing you want to do is figure out how to study halfway through a course that you don't want to fail out of.
Yeah, I would, controversial maybe here, but I personally think for a lot of people, for me included, EMT school is harder than medic school. And for me, I'm a good test taker. I went to like good schools. I got through like high school, like a 3.86 GPA or something like that. And I did not try.
Nerd.
Like, yeah, sure. I mean, it worked out. I just wanted to listen to punk rock music and ride my skateboard. And that's what I did. And I did well in school. And it was real hard when I got to EMT school because I didn't have good study habits. I wasn't good at that because I was able to do well in high school, kind of coasting. So for me, EMT school I think was a little bit harder than medic school because I learned that before I got to medic school, and I knew how to learn. I'd learned how to learn that I hadn't really had to do that before. So and I've had some students that I know have been that same way, that they really struggled because they didn't know how to study, how to take notes, how to find study groups and do those kind of things that can make you successful. So yeah, that would be, if I could say something to go back and do differently, I would talk to myself before EMT school, like you need to actually you need to read the book. Well, I don't like to read the book personally. I say it all the time. If you read the book for an hour and get 5 minutes of information, you wasted 55 minutes. Go find a better way to get that information. But spend your time learning. That's what I would tell myself prior to all of this. Like, learn how to learn, essentially, before you jump into it. But you guys, anything else you would have gone back and done it differently?
As far as paramedic school goes, gosh, it's so hard because I took such a long break in between ending one degree and then getting all the way to paramedic school. I learned so much in that 20 years about a lot of things. So I can't say what I would say to a younger me would be, going back to, again, graduating high school, going directly to get a 4-year degree and then moving on. We don't have to do things immediately in order. Take the time, like you were saying, get a couple of years of EMT experience. Sometimes even just volunteering, sometimes you got to volunteer before you can get paid. Sometimes you got to work for free before you can make any money at it. And that can be some of the best experience that and the most valuable experience that you get. So I would have to go all the way back to that 18-year-old me and say, hey, you want to follow your gut and take a year to decide what you want to do. And I think that just based on everything that we've talked about, I think that plays in really well here. Make sure that this is something that you want to do and get the experience that you need. I had a great, I think that medic school was easy for me just in the respect that I already know how to talk to people. I know how to do solution-based problem solving. I already knew how to discipline people. Not that we need to discipline people, but sometimes if you work downtown, you need to discipline some people. And I knew how to put my hands on people. I knew how to assess people. I knew all of that already. I had that life experience. So that's where I really benefited. That's what really benefited me in medic school. So take the time to get experience before, jumping into things, even if it's 6 months. You'll still learn a lot in 6 months.
Everybody, not everybody, a lot of people going through this are 22-year-olds. And I think that there's something to be said, like, you being like a second career a little bit later in life of having that life experience. You're going to struggle in some regards because, I'm close to 40 now and I definitely don't learn like I used to. Stuff doesn't stick like it used to, but having that life experience can be a huge, huge thing. So, don't just discount yourself because you're 30 plus thinking I can't do this. You're going to have different strengths maybe than other people do because of that life experience. How about you, Parker? Anything?
I think for me, I tell myself to take math more seriously.
Yeah, that's true.
I was always decent at math. Took AP Calculus in high school, but didn't really care for it because again, I always wanted to be a firefighter. I'm like, I'm not going to need to know AP Calculus to be a firefighter. So I kind of just shoved it off, and then med math came, and that was probably the place where I struggled the most. So I tell myself to take math more seriously, but joking aside, you guys nailed it on the head. Be proactive. If this is something that you really want to do, get that experience, even if it's just a year or two as an EMT, and be good. Be a good EMT. Own it. Some of the best medics that I know were phenomenal EMTs. And then I think also I tell myself to find a mentor who went through my same program, and stay in contact with them, ask them questions. At my old department, there were plenty of phenomenal medics that went through the same program that I did, and that's how I originally got into that program, is just by word of mouth. The letters of recommendation, my school recognized their names and were like, hey, sweet, this guy's good. But then I moved and I lost contact with them. So staying in contact with those who are going to help you progress and help you be a good medic. Because I essentially did it all on my own here in Boise, and it was difficult.
Yeah. Right on. Any closing thoughts from anybody as we're kind of wrapping this up? And kind of covered it, I think, in this last little
I
bit.
think we circled it pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you're considering medic school, hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight into our experiences. Obviously, this is just 4 people's experiences, but hopefully it can give you a little bit of insight of what can kind of help to make us successful and to get through it. We are now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that, so you can listen to this just audio only. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're on there if you want to check it out there. If you're just listening to us, we have a YouTube page with a whole bunch of other stuff you can check out. So yeah, appreciate you guys being here, sharing a little bit of knowledge with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
best job in the world. I can't imagine doing anything else. And, like I said, I'm the oldest one at this table. And for me to say that means something.
I should have done something different with you when you were my trainee to make you're too happy. I should have ruined it during your.
You didn't break her.
I
Yeah.
broke you.
You know,
Scared
okay,
all the time. Really easy to do.
Believe me, my first 3 weeks, 4 weeks out of FTO almost broke me.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is.
It's tough.
So,
Right on. Well, thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, listening, whatever you're doing, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.